Hello everyone, hi! So in this video I want to talk about my favorite vivid and complex literary characters. 5 characters that feel like real people to me and that have earned a spot at the perimeters of my heart. This is a video I've truly been wanting to film for ages, so if you're new here, hello and welcome. My name is Maria. I study comparative literature at the University of Vienna. And I think what happened lately is that I'm just back in the thick of my semester and I deal with literature a lot, and that's great, but in a very abstract way. So I've been craving the kind of straight up emotional connections I do have with some books and characters. So that is what this video is about. So let's get into the video. Oh, and do check out my course about French literature if you haven't already. It's always linked in the description box below. Let's start with the one that inspired this video idea for me. Titania from Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream. I read this play 3 years ago, I believe, and even though I've read many other plays by Shakespeare since then, this remains my favorite. It's so whimsical, the perfect dream world. Shakespeare is so good at just creating an atmosphere and leaving a lot of things unsaid. So he's good at ellipses, at leaving things out. But I still feel the entire time like I'm in this magical forest. This is just a bilingual edition, by the way, German and English. I don't really recommend the German translation, so I just have it for the English. But anyways, back to Titania. So Titania is the queen of the fairies in this play and the wife of the fairy king, Oberon. She guarantees the health and fertility of the natural and human world. And to do so, she has many little helpers that help her do good things, basically. The main plot line with her in the play is that she gets into a fight with her husband over a little changeling boy that she wants to keep. And she's very stubborn about that. She found that boy, she wants to keep him. Her husband doesn't want that. And even though she's a fairy queen and she's very gracious and physically delicate, she also doesn't compromise. So she is all those things, but she's also very strong-willed and independent, which leads Oberon, her husband, to poison her to kind of take revenge or to make her calm down or something. And she falls in love with an ass, and that makes her forget about the boy. A lot has been said about Titania and Oberon's problematic relationship, to say the least. Him making fun of her, all of that. I don't care too much about all of that. I just really love her strength and vulnerability. She just perfectly combines those two very admirable qualities in one character. And on top of that, she doesn't seem to care what other people think of her. So her own husband is sort of making fun of her. We as the readers might think she's a bit naive, but her straight focus on what is important to her, keeping the natural world fertile and healthy and taking care of people around her, it sort of lets her forget how she's perceived. She also speaks beautifully and has such a presence in the play, even though she doesn't say that much. And she definitely walks the line between rationality and irrationality quite well, so I do like that as well. Here's a quote from Act 3, Scene 1, where Titania has just drank that love potion and she's in love with that ass now and talks to him. She doesn't want him to leave. Titania, out of this wood do not desire to go. Thou shalt remain here, whether thou wilt or no. I am a spirit of no common rate. The summer still doth tend upon my state. And I do love thee, therefore go with me. I'll give thee fairies to attend on thee, and they shall fetch thee jewels from the deep, and sing while thou on pressed flowers dost sleep. And I will purge thy mortal grossness so, that thou shalt like an airy spirit go. Moving on to the next character on the list, Emma Bovary from Gustave Flaubert's Madame Bovary. I feel like it's a little bit of a yellow-orange flag to say that Madame Bovary is a character you like. You know these silly articles where it's like, oh, if you're dating someone and their favorite book is The Catcher in the Rye, then run or something. I feel like it's the same with if their favorite character is Madame Bovary. That's kind of problematic. But anyways, Emma is the main character of this novel, and she kind of stumbles into this very traditional life. She marries young, and then she just moves into a house with her husband somewhere on the countryside, and she is just constantly unhappy with how boring and unexciting her life is. And she always wants the next thing. Whether that is moving somewhere different clothes, a different man, right? She gets into affairs, different hobbies. She's just restless about everything. And I can relate to that. It has been so good and so important for me to read this book when I did, because I feel like it came to me at the perfect time where I really needed to realize that going down this road of pursuing the next big thing is just gonna make you very unhappy and burn you out on the way, and it's not, you know, it seems like the way to happiness, but it really isn't. Emma is bombarded with all these ideologies of how love is supposed to feel. She reads a lot of books, so she's like, wow, love should always feel like a storm that sweeps you off your feet, and everything should always be really exciting. And then I think she tries to learn the piano, but she really only likes the idea of playing piano. She doesn't really like practicing when it's hard. And aren't we also all influenced by messages like this nowadays through media and social media? Everything's supposed to be bigger, better, more glamorous, more comfortable. Something I talked about in my French literature course is that Flaubert is so good at talking about disillusionment. So again, this book was important for me to gain some awareness of that same mechanism inside of me, and it feels like Emma here took one for the team and showed us that the search for material things never ends, and actually you can destroy your life that way. So that is the one thing I love about her. But, and I think that is what really made me fall in love with her as a character, is that I also just felt very understood. I love living my life through idealized fantasies rather than reality sometimes, and I don't think that that's entirely wrong. It's just a fantastic book. Let me read you a quote. This is the translation by Geoffrey Wall, by the way. Down in her soul, the while she was waiting for something to happen. Like a shipwrecked sailor, she perused her solitary world with hopeless eyes, searching for some white sail far away where the horizon turns to mist. She didn't know what her luck might bring, what wind would blow it her way, what shore it would take her to, whether it was a sloop or a three-masted schooner, laden with anguish or cramped to the portholes with happiness. But every morning, when she awoke, she hoped it would happen that day, and she listened to every sound, jumping to her feet, surprised when nothing came. Then, as the day came to its end, with an even greater sadness, she was longing for the morrow. I am just realizing as I'm reading this again, the other thing that's great about her is that she doesn't even really mind if the drama that comes her way is negative. It's like, as long as there's exciting things happening in her life, that's all she needs. And it really makes me think of those experiments they do with people where they lock them in a room and people rather start hurting themselves than being alone with their own thoughts for 5 minutes or something. Like, what we cannot take as humans is just things being boring and plain and our everyday life or something. Next character, Philinte from Molière's play Le Misanthrope, or The Misanthrope. This play is about Alceste, a misanthrope. He really rejects society's hypocrisies. He hates people. He says that they're lying all the time. And then Philinte, the character I really like, is Alceste's friend. And he is there to kind of soften Alceste's extreme idealism and misanthropy. Philinte listens, but he also has the grace to not fall into extremes. You know how Aristotle said that a virtue is the golden mean between two vices? Philinte does that really, really well. So whereas Alceste is all the way on the one extreme of hating people, and maybe the other extreme will be not being critical at all of people, Philinte really gracefully walks that middle line because he's rational and tolerant and pragmatic, but without being simple-minded or annoying. He shows us that honesty and civility can coexist in a person. And that's such an admirable trait in a person to me. I really, really love that. If you want to read it, do it. Molière is so great at holding a mirror up to life. But I've made a big point in my French literature course to implore you to get the Ken Wilber translation. That is unfortunately a bit pricier than other translations, but to me it's really the only good way to read Molière in English. Let me give you a quote. So here is Alceste the misanthrope saying, "To honor all men is to honor none. Since you embrace this indiscriminate vice, your friendship comes at far too cheap a price. I spurn the easy tribute of a heart which will not set the worthy man apart. I choose, sir, to be chosen, and in fine, the friend of mankind is no friend of mine." And then a little bit later, Philinte comes along and says, quote, "Come, let's forget the follies of the times and pardon mankind for its petty crimes. Let's have an end of rantings and of railings and show some leniency towards human failings. This world requires a pliant rectitude. Too stern a virtue makes one stiff and rude. Good sense views all extremes with detestation, and bids us to be noble in moderation. The rigid virtues of the ancient days are not for us, they jar with all our ways, and ask of us too lofty a perfection. Wise men accept their times without objection. And there's no greater folly, if you ask me, than trying to reform society. Like you, I see each day 101 unhandsome deeds that might be better done. But still, for all the faults that meet my view, I'm never known to storm and rage like you. I take men as they are, or let them be, and teach my soul to bear their frailty. Next character I love is Annika from Leland de la Durantaye's Hannah versus the Tree. This novel that I've read a long time ago tells the story of Hannah Cyril, and she is the daughter of a wealthy family, the Cyril family, and they built their fortune on exploiting natural resources like the Amazon forest. So from an early age, Hannah, this young daughter, she's different. She feels estranged from her family's values, and she ends up hating her family for what they do. The book then tells the story of the family's downfall through Hannah. It's written in a report kind of way, how she figured out how to bring down her family tree from the inside. So that's the title, Hannah versus the Tree, Hannah versus her own family tree. And I think their weapon, their family weapon, might be a tree as well. I'm really hazy on the details. I'm due for a reread. And Annika is Hannah's cousin. She really inspires her, and I'm again a bit hazy on the details of what her role was exactly in the downfall, but I just loved it every time that Annika was described. She's fierce and she's deep, she's doing her own thing, and it seems like she's just sweeping through other people's life like a storm without getting stuck anywhere. I'll read you a quote, you'll know what I mean. Page 55. Annika's moral flexibility was of a different sort. It was fundamental. Order had some basic claim on me, on Hannah, such that we would seek it, whereas Annika was truly amphibious about order. She could move about it for a time, enjoying its benefits, appreciating its rhythms. And then one day she would see the sea and crave this order like an animal craves water, and she would run right for it down the long stretch of sand, stripping off clothes as she went, until she dove into the icy waters, not icy to her. This reminds me that the prose style of this book is just unlike anything I've ever read. It honestly reads more like a poem, but then it's this really thrilling story, and there are a lot of mythic elements in it as well. Truly such an interesting combination of characteristics for one book. Very, very unique. And I saved the best for last. Bathilde Amédée, the grandmother in Proust's In Search of Lost Time. So, I've really tried up until now to give you a bit more context about the characters and to not just swoon over them. But with the grandmother in Search of Lost Time, I really don't know what else to tell you other than I just love her and I want to be like her when I'm older. So again, Bathilde is the grandmother of the narrator, and she has a lot of emotional and moral influence on him. She loves nature and beauty and secondhand furniture and just seems like such a loving, intelligent and well-aging woman. I love when people who become older also become softer and more open, as opposed to bitter and closed, which unfortunately is so often the case. And I already know that her death will take up a lot of the plot in volume 2, and that will be very harsh for our narrator and for me. But let me read you a couple of quotes I picked out from the Lydia Davis translation. Here is page 15, one of the first times we hear about the grandmother. My poor grandmother would come in, ardently beg her husband not to taste the cognac. He would become angry, drink his mouthful despite her, and my grandmother would go off again, sad, discouraged, yet smiling, for she was so humble at heart and so gentle that her tenderness for others and the little fuss she made over her own person and her sufferings came together in her gaze, in a smile in which, unlike what one sees in the faces of so many people, there was irony only for herself, and for all of us, a sort of kiss from her eyes, which could not see those she cherished without caressing them passionately with her gaze. And page 42. My dear daughter, she said to Maman, I could not bring myself to give the boy something badly written. In fact, she could never resign herself to buying anything from which one could not derive an intellectual profit, and especially the profit which beautiful things afford us by teaching us to seek our pleasure elsewhere than in the satisfactions of material comfort and vanity. There's nothing I can say now that is more beautiful than the sentence we just heard. So I'm gonna keep it short. Do let me know what your favorite literary characters are. I'd love to read from you. And otherwise, I'll just see you again very soon. Bye bye.